I've been working with electric vehicles long enough to know that bad charging advice spreads faster than good advice. And with Tesla specifically, I see the same mistakes come through over and over again. Owners who genuinely care about their car, doing things they were told were safe, and slowly chipping away at their battery without realizing it. Today I'm going to walk you through 8 charging myths I run into constantly. Some of these are harmless misconceptions. Others are actively costing people range and long-term battery health. Let's get into it. Myth 1. You should always charge to 80% no matter what. I hear this one probably more than any other piece of Tesla advice. And I'll be honest, for a long time, it was solid general guidance. But the way it gets repeated now, without any context, is where it starts causing problems. The 80% guideline comes from real battery chemistry. When you push a lithium-ion NCA cell, that's the nickel-cobalt-aluminum chemistry, toward its maximum voltage repeatedly, you accelerate electrochemical wear on the cathode. Over thousands of cycles, that stress compounds into measurable capacity loss. So for long-range and performance variants of the Model 3, Model Y, Model S, and Model X, keeping daily charging around 80 to 90% is usually a smart habit. But here's what most people don't know, and what I've seen trip up a lot of owners. Tesla also uses LFP batteries, lithium iron phosphate, in standard range and rear-wheel drive Model 3 variants, particularly those built in the Shanghai Gigafactory, and those batteries behave completely differently. LFP cells operate at a much lower and more stable voltage window, roughly 3.2 to 3.65 volts, compared to the higher voltage swings in NCA chemistry. What that means practically is that a full charge on an LFP pack doesn't carry the same degradation risk it does on NCA. In fact, Tesla's own owner's manual recommends keeping your LFP charge limit set to 100% for daily use and doing a full charge to 100% at least once a week. The reason for that weekly full charge isn't just about range. It's about your battery management system staying calibrated. LFP cells have a very flat voltage curve across most of their charge range, which makes it harder for the BMS to estimate exactly where you are. Regular full charges give the system a known reference point to work from. Without them, your range readings start drifting, and owners typically blame the battery when it's really just a calibration issue. So before you apply any charging rule to your Tesla, the first thing to do is figure out which battery chemistry you actually have. You can check this directly from your car's charging screen. If you see percentage-based markers instead of daily and trip labels, you've got an LFP pack. If you have an LFP and you've been religiously capping yourself at 80%, you've been working against the car, not protecting it. Myth 2. Supercharging will destroy your battery. I get asked about this one constantly, and I understand why the fear exists. The logic seems sound on the surface. DC fast charging pushes a lot of current into the battery in a short time. Current generates heat, heat degrades cells. Straightforward, right? In practice, it's more nuanced than that. Recurrent, a company that tracks real-world data from tens of thousands of EVs on the road, looks specifically at this question by analyzing over 13,000 Teslas. They compared battery degradation in vehicles that primarily use superchargers against those that relied mainly on level 2 home charging. What they found was that frequent supercharging, under real-world conditions, doesn't show the kind of statistically meaningful accelerated degradation that the supercharging kills batteries narrative would predict. Now, that doesn't mean supercharging and level 2 charging are identical in terms of long-term cell stress. Home charging is generally gentler, runs at lower temperatures, and is a better default for daily use if you have access to it. But the idea that every road trip supercharging session is quietly shaving years off your battery is not what the data supports. What matters far more than charge speed is the temperature at which the charging happens. I've seen this firsthand. A hot battery being pushed hard right after a long drive takes that charge very differently than a properly conditioned battery arriving at a supercharger at the right temperature. This is why preconditioning is so critical, and why using Tesla's built-in navigation to route to a supercharger matters more than most people realize. When you navigate to a supercharger through the in-car system, Tesla automatically begins warming or cooling the battery to its optimal charging temperature before you arrive. Real-world testing on a Model Y in 30-degree Fahrenheit weather showed that a preconditioned battery peaked at 238 kilowatts and completed a 10 to 80% session roughly 10 minutes faster than the same car without preconditioning, which only reached 135 kilowatts. That's not a small difference. And the preconditioned session is also easier on the cells because the thermal management system isn't scrambling to catch up once charging starts. The takeaway isn't to avoid superchargers, it's to use them the right way. Navigate there through the car, let the preconditioning do its job, and stop treating every fast charge like an emergency repair bill waiting to happen. Myth 3. Cold weather permanently damages your Tesla battery. Every winter, I hear from Tesla owners who are convinced their battery is being permanently damaged because their range dropped and their charging slowed down. I usually ask them the same question: did the range come back when the temperatures warmed up? Almost always, the answer is yes. Cold weather does real things to your Tesla. Lithium-ion cells in freezing temperatures experience increased internal resistance, which makes them less efficient at both delivering and accepting energy. Depending on how cold it gets and how you're driving, range loss of 20 to 40% during winter months is fairly typical. In really extreme cold, some owners see even more than that. But that range loss is a performance effect, not a permanent degradation event. The capacity is still there. The chemistry is just sluggish at low temperatures. Once the pack warms up, you get that capability back. This is an important distinction because a lot of owners see the range drop, assume something is broken, and start making charging decisions based on a problem that doesn't actually exist, where real cold weather damage can happen. And this is something worth paying attention to, is when you charge a fully cold battery at high rates without preconditioning first. At temperatures near freezing, there's a risk of lithium plating, where lithium deposits form on the graphite anode rather than intercalating properly. Over time, repeated lithium plating does cause measurable, irreversible capacity loss. Tesla is aware of this, which is why the car automatically limits its own charge rate in very cold conditions until the pack reaches a safe temperature. The practical habit here is straightforward. Keep your Tesla plugged in when it's parked in cold weather. That allows the car to use grid power, not battery power, to maintain pack temperature, which means both your 12V system and your main pack stay healthier. Tesla officially recommends activating preconditioning at least 30 to 45 minutes before you plan to charge or depart, and the scheduled departure feature in the app handles this automatically if you set it up. When you do head to a supercharger in winter, routing through the navigation activates preconditioning en route, so by the time you plug in, the chemistry is ready to accept a full charge cleanly. This one comes from older battery technology, specifically nickel-cadmium cells, which did benefit from periodic full discharges to counter something called memory effect. People carried that habit into the lithium-ion era, and it stuck around. Lithium-ion chemistry doesn't have memory effect. A full discharge to zero doesn't reset anything useful. What it does do is push the cells into a very low voltage state, and lithium-ion cells under sustained low voltage experience accelerated degradation at the anode. I've seen battery packs that were consistently run to near zero show noticeably higher degradation rates than packs managed more carefully, even with similar mileage. Tesla's own documentation recommends avoiding drops below 20% for regular daily use. There is a small grain of truth buried in this myth, though, and it's worth addressing directly so people understand the difference. Once a year or so, a single controlled discharge followed by a full charge to 100% can help recalibrate the battery management system's state of charge accuracy. But that's a calibration procedure, a rare, intentional event, not a regular charging strategy. And even that should be done sparingly, because the benefit to BMS accuracy is modest, and the stress on the cells from the deep discharge is real. For daily driving, the healthiest state of charge range is roughly 20 to 80%. That window keeps the cells at voltages where electrochemical reactions stay stable, thermal loads stay manageable, and cycle-to-cycle wear stays minimal. Letting the car regularly scrape the bottom isn't being thorough, it's just unnecessary stress on a pack that doesn't need it. Myth 5. It doesn't matter when you unplug after a full charge. This one catches people off guard because on the surface it seems like a non-issue. You charge to 100%, the car is done. What's the problem with leaving it plugged in all day before a trip? The issue is sustained high-voltage stress. When a lithium-ion NCA or NMC cell sits at or near maximum voltage for an extended period, the cathode material experiences a process called lithium-ion loss at the electrode interfaces. It's slow and it's incremental, but across hundreds of instances, it registers as real capacity degradation. This is different from the act of charging to 100%, which is fine for road trips. The problem is specifically the sitting time at that high state of charge. In practice, what I usually suggest to owners is this. Use Tesla's scheduled charging feature to time the charge so it finishes right around when you plan to leave. The car handles all of this automatically. You just set your departure time and target charge level in the app, and it manages the session to end at the right moment. That way you get the range you need without the pack sitting at peak voltage for hours before you actually drive. For owners who set daily limits at 80 to 90%, this is much less of a concern because the cell voltage at those levels is meaningfully lower than at 100%. But if you're regularly charging to full the night before a trip and then not leaving until the following afternoon, that's a habit worth adjusting. Myth 6. Charging every night wears out your battery faster. This myth comes from a misunderstanding of what a charge cycle actually is, and I hear it from owners who avoid plugging in every night specifically to save cycles. The thinking is that every plug-in session counts as a cycle, and cycles are finite. A charge cycle isn't a single plug-in event. One full cycle equals 100% of the battery's total capacity being used and replenished, regardless of how many individual sessions it's spread across. If you charge from 50 to 80% every night, you're accumulating a fraction of a cycle per session. You'd need several of those top-ups over multiple days before you've completed a single full cycle. Plugging in nightly at a moderate charge limit isn't dramatically accelerating your cycle count. What's actually more stressful on a lithium-ion pack is the alternative, letting the battery sit at a low state of charge for extended periods, then doing larger top-ups. Lithium cells are happiest when they're kept in the middle of their range, roughly 20 to 80%. Regular, moderate top-ups to stay in that window are genuinely healthier for the cells than allowing wide swings from very low to very high. There's also a practical benefit people overlook. A car that's regularly plugged in can use grid power to handle background tasks. Software updates, cabin climate maintenance, 12-volt battery management, instead of draining the main pack. Over time, that adds up. Nightly charging at 80% is not a risk. Avoiding it based on a misunderstood cycle myth is what actually costs you in the long run. Myth 7. Third-party chargers will damage your Tesla battery. As Tesla has rolled out the NEC AC ACE port more broadly and the CC ACE adapter has become part of the picture, I've been hearing this one more and more. The idea is that anything outside the supercharger network, ChargePoint, Electrify America, EVgo, is unreliable at best and harmful at worst. In my experience, the fear usually comes from one or two bad charging sessions where a third-party station was slow or through an error, and from there it becomes these chargers are dangerous. The reality of what's actually happening under the hood is quite different. Your Tesla's battery management system is the gatekeeper for every charging session, no matter where the power is coming from. When you plug into a DC fast charger, the BMS negotiates directly with that charger. It sets the voltage and current parameters the battery will accept at that moment, based on pack temperature, state of charge, and cell condition. The network doesn't push power in. The car pulls what it decides is safe. A third-party station has no ability to override that logic. Tesla itself sells an official CCS Combo 1 adapter, rated up to 250 kilowatts, built specifically to connect Tesla vehicles to non-Tesla networks. That product wouldn't exist if third-party charging were genuinely harmful to the pack. Where the real risk lives, and this is worth being specific about, is in uncertified, off-brand adapters from discount marketplaces. Adapters without proper UL or CE certification can lack the thermal monitoring and safety shutoffs needed to handle the high voltages involved, especially in newer Teslas. The certified hardware is what matters, not the network brand. An Electrify America charger used with Tesla's official CCS-own adapter is not a risk. An unknown adapter from an unverified seller is a different story. There's also a software consideration that a lot of owners aren't aware of. Before Tesla's 2025.2 software update, automatic battery preconditioning only activated when you navigated to a Tesla supercharger, not a third-party fast charger. That update addressed the gap, but if your software is behind, you'll want to manually precondition before pulling into a CCS station in cold weather to get anywhere near the charge speed the hardware is capable of. Myth 8. Heat is only a problem in extreme conditions. Most Tesla owners know at some level that heat is bad for batteries, but the way this usually gets framed, desert heat, parking in the sun in the middle of August, makes it sound like an edge case that only applies in extreme situations. In my experience, heat-related battery stress shows up in much more ordinary scenarios than people expect. One of the most common situations I see, an owner finishes a long, spirited highway drive, pulls into a supercharger, and plugs in immediately. The pack is already thermally loaded from sustained high-speed use, and now high-current charging is being added on top of that existing heat. Tesla's liquid cooling system is running the whole time and doing its job, but you're putting the thermal management system under more load than it would be handling if the pack had a few minutes to settle first. This isn't a catastrophic problem. Tesla's systems are sophisticated enough to manage it, but if you have the flexibility to walk inside for 10 minutes before starting a charging session after an aggressive drive, that's a genuinely sensible habit. The pack temperature drops, the thermal management workload decreases, and the early phase of the charging session is cleaner. A related detail that often surprises people: a 2025 test on a parked Model 3 left in direct sun showed the cabin reaching 120 degrees Fahrenheit, while the battery pack stayed near 85 degrees thanks to Tesla's thermal isolation. So your car isn't defenseless against ambient heat, but ambient temperature does raise the baseline that the cooling system has to manage. Charging in shade when you have the choice is always going to be lower stress on the thermal side than charging in direct sun, even if the difference in pack temperature is smaller than you might expect. The long game thinking here is that heat is cumulative. Individual sessions don't make or break a battery, but across hundreds of charging events over several years, the owners who consistently manage temperature, parking in shade, using preconditioning, not fast charging a hot pack when they could wait, tend to show noticeably better battery retention at high mileage. What actually works? The habits that hold up over time. So let's pull this together into something practical. Know your battery chemistry first. Check your charging screen. If you see percentage markers instead of daily and trip labels, you have an LFP pack, and you should be charging to 100% regularly, not capping yourself at 80. If you have NCA or NMC chemistry, 80 to 90% for daily use is the right call. Make home charging your default. Level 2 charging overnight is slower, cooler, and gentler on the cells than DC fast charging. It also lets the car handle background tasks on grid power instead of pulling from the main pack. Reserve supercharging for road trips and situations where you genuinely need the speed. Always route to superchargers through the in-car navigation. That one habit activates automatic battery preconditioning, which makes a measurable difference in both charge speed and thermal stress, especially in cold weather. Keep your daily state of charge between 20 and 80%. This isn't a rigid rule, but it's the range where lithium cells experience the least voltage-related stress over time. Avoid frequent deep discharges and avoid leaving the pack sitting at 100% for extended periods when you're not about to drive. Use Tesla's scheduled charging feature. Set your departure time, set your target, and let the car time the charge to finish when you need it. This alone eliminates the sitting at full charge problem without requiring any extra effort. In cold weather, precondition, either through scheduled departure in the app or by navigating to your charger ahead of time. Charging a cold, unprepared battery at high speed is one of the few scenarios where real, lasting cell damage can accumulate. And finally, when using third-party networks, use certified hardware. The official Tesla CCS1 adapter or an equivalent from a reputable brand with published safety certifications. The network isn't the risk. A cheap, unverified adapter is. I've seen owners with 130,000, 150,000 miles on their packs still showing over 90% battery health. That doesn't happen by accident. It happens because the right habits, applied consistently, genuinely compound over time. Most of these myths feel true because they're built on partial information. A kernel of real battery science gets simplified, passed around forums and comment sections, and somewhere along the way the nuance gets dropped and it becomes a rule people follow without questioning. Your Tesla has one of the most advanced battery management systems in any consumer vehicle on the road. It's not fragile, but the difference between a battery that holds up well at high mileage and one that doesn't usually comes down to a handful of habits, consistently applied over the life of the car. Check your battery type today. Make sure your charge limit is set for the chemistry you actually have. That one change, if you've had it wrong, might be the most useful thing you take from this video. If this helped, share it with another Tesla owner who might still be following outdated advice, and subscribe if you want more content like this. No filler, just what actually holds up in the real world.